Anil, for your elaborate introduction. Thank you so much. Once again, welcome back to the day 5. Good morning to all the participants. So far, we have seen so many techniques of computer vision, how they can be implemented in DL, ML, in both the FDPs, FDP1 as well as FDP2. Today, one important area of computer vision, which is nothing but a 3D reconstruction, which is playing very important role as order of the day. Since today we are interested with the medical arena or robotics, so nowadays we are interested with very much interested with 3D reconstruction because we are handling many medical equipments, robotics, where precise measurements of the object is very important, and the spacing between the objects is very important, where this concept plays a key role. So in this session, we are going to see the basics of 3D reconstruction. After that, one important technique, 3D reconstruction of geospatial data, and another technique, depth maps. Third, we are coming to the geometrical data, 3D reconstruction of the geometric data. These are the three techniques we are going to see in this session. And as far as my session is concerned, I try to limit 1 hour. After half an hour, we are going to see the hands-on with we are going to show you the hands-on with the Colab. After that, we also want to show you the real YOLO implementation with object detection. Those are the complete frame of this 1.5 session. So I may go a little bit fast, or if you are having any problem, you please represent, then I will stop and I will come back to your things. That is the way how we are moving. So now let us start with the session. Earlier we know there is a proverb, Rome is not built in a single day. That was the proverb we are all familiar, but right now that was not the scenario. By using the technology, we can build the Rome in a single day. How that is, we will see. So now coming to the techniques. As you know that human is the best creature on this universe in the visualization of the 3D objects. So his vision organ is built in such a way that he can easily assimilate the 3D objects. Now coming to the technological aspects, this first imaging concept comes with the pinhole camera. Pinhole camera is a very simple law. Here you are having only two things, one cubic box you needed and one object. So whatever light illuminated from the object, that will be passed through a small hole, which we will call it as a pinhole. After that, it will create the inverted image on the film. That is the reason this also said to be the, so light is passing through a small hole, pinhole, and it is forming the inverted image on the film. The back surface, we will call it as a film. So this is a simple fundamental which we are observing when creating the images. Same concept, analogous concept is existing in our eye. So your eye consisting of a lens, cornea. So this is your object. Light from the light illuminated from the object that passes through the lens, through cornea as well as the lens, and at the back we know that we are having the retina. Their image is going to be formed. So same principle. If you observe the both the processes, it is going to have the same principle. But the thing is, we are not interested with the image. We are interested with the 3D object. We are interested with the 3D object. That's why we are interested with the 3D object. That's why we will see how 3D objects, we are able to see the 3D objects, but not with the single eye. You want to have the 3D objects assimilation means you need the two eyes. That we will call it as a stereo vision. If you see, we are having left eye as well as the right eye. And after that, this is the object, let us assume. So here we are following the triangulation law. So whatever the rays projected from the left eye and right eye, they are focused on a single object. That is the way how you are able to measure the depth of the object. You know that 3D planar view, we are having length and width. Third dimension is nothing but the depth. Because of the depth creation only, we are able to see the 3D objects. So with the two eyes, you are able to see the depth of the object. So in this presentation, we are interested with the depth. So this is the way how you can able to see the depth of the object. That is the prime objective of ours in the today's class. Now coming to the technological evaluation. So this is the what we thought pinhole camera, which is nothing but you are having. If you model the same with our technological aspect, this is your object, this is the lens. In our case, we are having biconvex lens. So this is the lens and this is the film. This is the way how you are going to form the image in case of the film camera, which is similar to your pinhole camera concept. Right now we are using the digital cameras. Coming to the digital camera, your thin film is replaced by the sensor. This can be the array. If in case of the primarily we are going to use two kinds of digital techniques. One is the CCD technology, another one is the CMOS technology. So this is replaced by film is replaced by the imager, which is nothing but a CCD array or which can be a CMOS imager. So the coming to the principle, fundamental principle is same. So light reflected from the object that passes through a light passes through the lens, which forms the image on the either film or on the imager. After that, if it is a digital, those pixels will be collected and processed. Finally, you can store. This is the way how we are doing in case of the digital camera. Digital imaging, this is the film camera, this is the digital camera. We are not interested with this. As already I told you, we are interested with the 3D cameras. In case of 3D cameras, you can create the depth of the object. That is the three-dimensional view, real object view you can see. So that is the interest with us. This is possible right now. We are available with the 3D hardware, 3D cameras like LIDARs. In the same way, 3D printers are available. 3D printing we are aware of. And coming to the source, if you are having a planar object or a single image, two-dimensional image, even you can create the 3D data by using the scanners. So laser scanners are there. With that laser scanners, from the 2D data, you can create the point cloud. From the point cloud, you can reconstruct the 3D image. That is also possible. So this is the way how we are able to available with the hardware. Because of the available hardware, you can directly see the 3D objects. But we know that right now why we are specially studying 3D and how it is going to change us our lives, what are the technologies available, all those things we can see. Directly using the 3D hardware is a compared to the 3D reconstruction, using the 3D LiDAR, if you take, it costs more than 6 lakh. So it is a costly affair. An individual cannot afford the 3D hardware directly. That's why we are going to study some techniques how we can process the 3D data as well as how we can reconstruct the 3D objects. That is the objective. Now coming to the eye versus camera, we know that CCD, our lens is spherical, but CCD is not spherical. Whereas our retina is having variable resolution automatically based on the object which we are observing. Resolution varies, we can perfectly see the object. In case of CCD, we are having the constant resolution, so you have to vary the lens resolutions, lenses, all those things. Based on the required resolution, your hardware costs. In the same way, whereas eye is having the focus limited range, whereas your camera you can change the zoom, so you can go for the wide range also. So there are some advantages as well as the disadvantages when you are comparing our natural eye with the camera. Now, why we are interested with 3D right now? Is there any problem with the existing 2D, or what are the approaches we have to follow? Those things we will see. As traditional 2D computer vision systems, if you see, they are working still good with some applications like your barcode reading. In the same way, whether the person is there, person detection, object tracking, in such a cases, it is working well. But the 2D cameras, they are working with the light reflected from the object. Already you have seen the fundamental principle. They are working with the light reflected from the object. Whenever there is the changes in the illumination, they are going to have the adverse effects. Suppose if you are having too much of reflection light, then you are going to have the blurring. In the same way, if the illumination is insufficient, then you can't see the features properly. So these are the problems. These are the problems existing with the. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So these are the problems existing with the existing 2D technology. So now when there is a illumination which is not easily controllable, in such a cases, you can't handle the 2D machine vision systems. So that is the reason why we have to go for the 3D. Now, how it is possible? Why we are not comfortable all these days? Right now, why you are taking this decision means, as already I have shown you, right now, lot of hardware is available either for acquiring or for the processing or for the storing. So, lot of hardware is available for us. In the same way, now you are having lot many tools to model the geometry of the objects as well as the scenes. That is the one thing. In the same way, if you want to use the knowledge based systems or learning systems, right now we are available with large 3D data sets. In the same way, we are having lot of computational power in terms of GPUs and in terms of CPU also, CPUs, TPUs. That is one reason why we are mobilized right now for the 3D. And coming to the key strength of deep learning architecture is they are continuously learning in a better way to recognize the features in a hierarchical manner from the input data. That is also one good advantage with the CNNs as well as the deep neural networks. And in the same way, sensing technologies also, there are lot of advancements taking place. Because of that, you can have the acquisition devices with in affordable cost, not only at the individual level. I am talking about at the level of at least industries. Now they are able to afford. Once they afford the devices means they can collect the data, they can provide the data available to the academicians also. So those are the advantage for us. Now coming to the introductory part, what are the existing technologies or techniques available with the 3D representations? There are already some techniques are available uh, in terms of physics based techniques. Those are the stereo vision, which we are very familiar, which we are using even in case of human being. In the same way, time of flight, laser triangulation method, and structured light. These are the few techniques, existing physics based techniques, which we are using in reconstruction of the objects, in 3D reconstruction of the objects. But the problem with these techniques and why we are switching to the learning based techniques, those things we will study in the, we will learn in the further slides. Now coming to the 3D computer vision techniques, as already I mentioned you, these are the four familiar techniques right now in the existence. As already I told you, laser triangulation, which is very precise, but as you see here you are having two prime components. One is the laser source and another one is the camera sensor. This camera sensor will act as a receiver. This is nothing but a laser source which illuminates the object, which illuminates the surface of the object. So reflected light will be collected by the sensor, which will act as a receiver. So it is able to create the 3D object. The problem with this technique is your object should be in the motion, and this is our basic technique which we have seen. Here you should have the two views. You need two cameras. From the two cameras you have to take two views. Same point we will see, same point assimilation at a convergence at a single point. That's a way how we are going to create the stereo vision by using two cameras. In this case, you need two cameras. That is the thing here. And the third technique is a structured light. Here, you have to illuminate the entire object in a specific pattern. So here you need a light source which is to generate the pattern, proper light pattern. Then only you are able to reconstruct the 3D object. Final technique is the time of flight. It is similar to your laser technique, but here we will illuminate the light and collected the light, and what is the time taken by the light to travel the round, the total time of flight, total the round flight, that we will be using in reconstructing the objects. So these are the various techniques available right now, which are the physics based techniques in the reconstruction of the 3D objects. So these are techniques which we will say conventional techniques. So this is our stereo vision. If you see multiple views, you are reconstructing the 3D objects from the multiple view. At least you need three views to project to the 3D point. That is the requirement in this case. There are various techniques. This is nothing but the depth maps. As already I mentioned, how to create the 3D using the depth maps. We are going to discuss what a depth map is and how we can create those things we will see. So these are the techniques how we can be using. Now see, in case of stereo vision, as already you have seen, you need two cameras. So from the two cameras, you are projecting to the two planes. Same point you have to focus so that you are able to reconstruct the image. So now see, in case of certain cases, you may not match the points, 2 points. Then it is not possible proper reconstruction. And the same way you see here, these are the problems existing with the stereo vision. If there are holes, then those points may not be mapped. In such a cases, what is the problem is, you may not tackle the dense reconstruction. That means if the points are very varying or features are very varying in nature, in such a cases, if there are the holes or if the image is not properly seen in one plane, then you are not able to reconstruct the 3D. That was the problem existing with the stereo vision. And at least you need two views to reconstruct the 3D in case of stereo vision. As human beings are able to see with two eyes a 3D object, same principle we are following here. Now coming to the next level, how we are moving to the next level, why it is possible right now. As already I covered so many points, we are interested with the so many industries, either game industry. Gaming is a important technology right now. Embedded electronics or embedded systems or AR VR technology we are using in many areas. Robotics or agriculture applications, we need in many cases, we need 3D models. But existing 2D models are not fully satisfying what are the requirements we are hoping so. So that is the reason, and that too when we are going with the existing stereo vision, as already we have seen, especially when you are dealing with the agriculture field, there you are not able to distinguish the features, all seems to be alike. In such a cases also, sometimes proper reconstruction is not possible. Whereas if you want to directly use the 3D hardware means, already I mentioned 3D scanner is the source how you can generate the 3D data, but that is the costly and you need a skill also. So that is the reason we are looking for alternate solutions. Those solutions are nothing but how to reconstruct by using learning technologies or knowledge based technologies. That's where we are thinking of right now. So when we are going these techniques, first of all we have to understood few things. One thing is what kind of data we are handling, whether we are handling the data rigid or non-rigid kind of thing is required. Suppose you are moving with the moving curves, then you have to think of the non-rigid transformations. If you are seeing the proper geometrical shapes, then you can go with the rigid kind of transformations. What is a transformation? Why we have to look for all these things? There may be lot of variations. One is your source illumination may not be perfect. Second, your camera may be in motion, or there are other environmental conditions. Because of that, you may not have the proper lighting conditions. Because of this, you have to do some transformations before reconstructing the 3D. Those transformations may be, one is the translation, as already I mentioned you, because one camera may be move ahead, it may be small deviation. In such a cases, you have to apply the translation and you have to see that both the points, both the cameras are looking at the same point. In the same way, sometimes there may be a small, one camera may be a small angle rotation. In such a cases, you have to bring back. So you have to apply some rotation transformation. In the same way, scaling, the way in which way you are projecting, based on that scaling may be occurring. So these kinds of transformations we have to apply before going for the reconstruction. Those are nothing but translation, rotation, or scaling. So these kinds of transformations we will call them as the rigid transformation or affine transformations. So again, based on the image you are taking, whether it is a image or 2D or 3D, based on that degrees of freedom is going to change. Suppose these are the 2D transformations, that is these are related to image which is having a two-dimensional. If you see translation, you can move the changes either in the x direction or in the y direction. So degrees of freedom in this case is the 2. Whereas if you are dealing with the 3D object, then you can move the object either in the x, y or z. So degrees of freedom in this case is the 3. In the same way, based on the operation you are performing, based on that number of degrees will be going to be changing. And this is the way how we can propose the transformations before processing the data. Same thing we are showing here. You see, these are the different points. How the two views. Let us say when you are concentrating on this point here, these are the two cameras. How you are capturing this point by using two cameras in the technique of multi-view. In the same way, if you are projecting this point, how you can see. So this is the way how you are seeing the real world pixel, real world point by using two cameras, and you are able to get the three-dimensional point of the real world. So that is the way how we are reconstructing the real world point. Real world point is a three-dimensional. It is having x, y, z. X direction, y direction, that gives you the shape. After that, you are going to have the depth of the pixel also. We can call it as a voxel. That's the way how you can get the real time object, and how you can correct the all the variations either in terms of rotation, or in terms of the translation, or in terms of the scaling by applying various transformations, which we will call them as a affine transformations. Certain times we need to have the projections also. In such a cases, you have to go for the projection transformations or projective transformations, or we will call it as a homogeneous transformations. By using these transformations, first we will make ourselves data is ready. So now these are the demand where right now they are expecting for a 3D data. As already I mentioned, robotics is one emerging area. Autonomous driving, we are all listening right now, autonomous cars, autonomous vehicle, which is a lot of growing area. And another one is medical image processing, where lot of times we are not able to get the uh, real ground truth. There we have to build the models. There this kind of technology playing a key role. Right now, AR, VR is the one of the popular technology which is playing a very, very crucial role. There also you need the 3D representation. Not only this, we need the 3D in agriculture, manufacturing, inspection, quality control. So there are various areas, even civil construction, architecture, even filmmaking, entertainment, as well as the technical or scientific domains. Many domains are looking for the 3D reconstruction, which is a lot of thrust. We are having in this area, a lot of thrust research is required here. So even in during COVID-19, this 3D reconstruction played a key role in detecting the infection in the lungs. If you see, this is the lungs in all the modalities, not only CT, MRI, even in the X-ray also it played a key role by combining the different views of X-rays, how to create the 3D. Now see, this is a modality, CT modality, where you are having the left lung as well as the right lung. How you can detect the infection. Here blue stands for the infected area, green stands for the left. As you know that when you are taking the picture, there reflection is there. Because of that, you are going to have the left as right, right as the left. So this is the left lung, left. This is the right lung. This is the blue stands for the infected area. So in the 3D, you can exactly recognize the how much area was affected and where it is located. So localization is easy in 3D, and as well as the exact area detection is also easy. That area and volumetric analysis you cannot perform in the two-dimensional. That was the problem with the 2D. So as already I mentioned you, this is a traditional technique, which is a stereo technique, how you can create the 3D object, which is a purely physics-based technology. So these are the different views of 2D, 3D objects. In all the cases, you can see the depth of the object also. So now we are not interested with the physics-based technology. As you know that here you need a lot of projections, which is a very cumbersome to understand as well as to reconstruct. A lot of geometry is required. So instead of that, now we are interested with the learning based 3D reconstruction. We are looking for 3D reconstruction using our learning based technologies, deep learning. So that's where we are concentrating right now. So you want to utilize this in your problem space, means you need the knowledge in these areas. You need a knowledge in the machine learning and differential geometry, functional analysis, and to representation you need some knowledge in the vision as well as the science. So after these things, after getting the knowledge in these things, you are able to understand as well as the reconstruct the 3D, or though your machine is reconstructing to infer whether it is doing properly or not, or to predict certain futuristic things also, you must have the knowledge. Though your machine will do automatically, but to infer the facts or to project the future predictions, to go for the future predictions, you must have the knowledge in this domain. So now we are interested with the 3D. with respect to machines, you want to reconstruct the 3D means, first of all, you must have the knowledge in the data. How data must be represented in 3D? There are two ways of representing the data, either Euclidean or non-Euclidean, or we can say it as a structured or non-structured. Non-structured data, we call it as a geometric data. What is meant by structured or non-structured means whether you can represent the data on grid or not. You are having the clear idea how we are making the 2D into 3D, how we are representing the analog to digital. You will simply making the sampling and quantization. While doing those things, you will represent the entire image as a grid. So that is a structure. You can easily give the naming to the each pixel. You can easily indexing and handling is easy. So whether you are able to represent the data on the grid or not, that is the important aspect. If you are represented on the grid, you can say call it as a structured data. If you are not able to represent on a grid, you can say it as a geometric data. So here you can't represent the data in the vector space. If it is a structured data, you can clearly mention that points as 1, 1, 1, 2, like that. You can easily represent the data. That is, vector representation is possible. And the same thing, you can handle the entire image at a single time. That is nothing but global parameterization is possible with the Euclidean data. And you can represent with respect to a single coordinate system, common coordinate system, but that is not possible with the non-structured data. And coming to the examples, you can have the projections, volumetric data, or multi-view data, or descriptors. All are the examples for the structured data. Whereas the point clouds, 3D meshes, graphs, all these we can call it as a non-structured data. One important point is point cloud and 3D meshes, they are applicable to both structured as well as the non-structured data. So these are the few examples for the structured data. Here you can see. So in case of 3D data, the important point is you can see the size, shape, and texture. That is the important aspect. So here, how to get the 3D model is, you need a separate modeling technique. By using any software, you can first you can get the model of the 3D. That 3D model, while doing the 3D modeling, we will put into our mind shape and size and texture of the object. By using these things, we can get the first 3D model. So as already I mentioned, meshes or you can get sometimes by assembling the parts also you can get the 3D model. That is one important aspect. Or you can go for the mesh or point clouds. All these things are useful to generate the 3D data. This is the broader classification which I spoke right now. To assimilate the things, I have given you in a representation, graphical representation. So Euclidean or structured data, non-Euclidean or geometrical data. These comes under the descriptors as feature descriptors or projections, RGB or depth maps, volumetric voxels or octree or multi-view. All these comes under the Euclidean. Or point clouds, graphs or meshes. As already I mentioned you, point clouds or meshes can be considered under both the classes. And coming to the geometrical representation, how geometrical representation can process in the neural network technology. First, either you can get the shape. So from the shape, you have to shape features you have to extract. Or if it is a CNN, directly you can feed the image to CNN. Two-dimensional CNN you can consider. Directly you can feed your image to CNN. You can merge all the features, obtain the features, merge the features. Finally, you can get the 3D. Or in terms of the features, you can get the features. After extracting the features, you can apply the deep learning model and you can process the data. So there are different ways. Either directly you can feed your view for a network and you can get the 3D, or you can extract the features. From the features, you can learn your model. After that, you can get the 3D. There are the two different techniques. And one more concept is there, depth. depth representation of the image, which is a very, very important aspect. In certain times, this is also useful for us. Now we will see how we can represent the depth, all those things in the further slides. So this is the basic architecture. We will call it as a two-stream, or this is also known as the UNet. By using this UNet, you can process the two-dimensional data to create the 3D object. This is also known as the encoder, decoder, or UNet. This part is the encoder, and this part is the green part is the decoder. First, you can feed the image. By using encoder, you can get the fully connected object or fully connected view. After that, you can go through the decoder. You can get the again back to the original image. This is the way how you can recognize your 3D by using UNet, or we can say it as a two-stream CNN. Now we are entering into the first 3D representations of whichever we implemented in VFSTR on geospatial data. Here we did a lot of work in 3D representation on geospatial data. We are able to reconstruct DSM, surface models or elevation or terrain models or mosaics by using this 3D technology. So what was the workflow we followed here is we obtained the images by using drone. So we collected the aerial images with the help of drone. After that, we stitched the image so that to get the entire view of the scene. After that, we generated the 2D by using the stitching. Then we generated the 3D models by processing different 2D models. Finally, we analyzed the model. This is the way how we created the 3D models in case of our geospatial data. So this is the way how first flight path is required. So we created the flight path for the drone. After that, 20 degrees separation. With 20 degrees separation, we created the flight path. With 70% overlap, we collected the images. We created the 3D views. For that, we have used the Open Drone Maps. Open Drone Map is the open source software. By using this, we created different models here. So this is the ortho photo of our campus. More than 170 images we used to create this view. By collecting 170 images, after processing those 170 images, we are able to create the three-dimensional view of our campus of various buildings which are present in our campus. And this we will call it as a digital surface model. This model we created using the Open Drone Map. Same thing we tried in the Python. We are nearly able to come to the creation of the 2D model and 3D models by using aerial data. And this is the terrain model, digital terrain model. Here only surface is important for us, which we will call it as a digital terrain model. And this is the 3D texture model we created with the same images. After that, this is a point cloud data, point cloud models we created, contours we created here. Why we created all these things? Are we doing any measurement? Simply we are creating. Even we are able to do certain measurements. So this is our hostel building. After creation of the point clouds, we are able to compute what is the volume of this building. In this case, we measured the height of the building. What is the height of this building? And we compared with the real-time data. They are able to closely match. In this case, we computed the area of this building. So here you can do a lot of measurements. You can see the exact area, volume, even height of the height of the buildings or height of the construction. So you can go with these technology. So these are the some advantages of 3D, or you can use for your any other purposes also you can use. So this is the first work we carried out in 2D, 3D models. After that, we have seen this is the structured data only. Whatever we have done so far, this is the structured data, but we worked with the geospatial data. Right now, you know the importance of geospatial data. Without geospatial data, you can't move a single application. Yeah, whatever application you take, any application linked with the geospatial data, that is that much of importance. When you are going, you are tracking so many things with your mobile. There, your geospatial data is playing a key role. That's why first we concentrated on handling with the geospatial data. Next, we came with the depth map. In case of depth map, here when you are dealing with the geospatial data, entire image and its resolution all plays a key role. Here we are going for a lot of complexity, lot of computational complexity is existing. So we tried with a simple concept. Instead of handling the entire image, are we do anything with the distance function? As we know that whoever knows the image processing, distance function is very important. Distance transforms plays a key role. So now we changed our view to the simple process. Whether we can do something with the distance functions, that is the idea. We started this work. Even this technique was used by the Facebook. Whatever iPhone we are using, in case of iPhone, 3D images are rendering with the help of 2D views. Already this technique was implemented in self-driving cars, as well as the 3D cameras, 3D TVs, as well as so many real-time technologies. That's what we tried here. So in case of depth map, what is a depth map is, it is nothing but a depth information to create a 3D rendering in a 2D space. That means as you are doing in a stereo vision, we will take the two cameras, and by using two cameras, we try to compute the depth of the every pixel from the camera. That's what is the basic principle involved here. So, or directly from the 3D images, can we create the depth map? These are the two techniques. From the 2D spaces, rendering the 2D spaces, or we create the 3D, or by calculating the depth from the camera, from the each pixel to the each pixel, can we create the distance map or distance function? Those are the two things we are having. So here depth map is nothing but it is a distance representation of your image from a reference point. It is a simply distance representation of your image. Image in the sense it is nothing but a pixel from some reference point. Here reference point is nothing but your camera. It provides the details of the depth based, that is how near or how far away from that. Based on that, you are able to create the you are able to create the gray level map. Gray level map you are able to create based on whether the object is near to the reference point or far to the reference point. Based on that, gray level intensity will be varying. So that itself is a measure of the distance function. So how this idea came into the picture is, when you are moving or when you are running, you are having a one experience that objects which are close to us seems to be moving faster than the which are far away. This effect we will call it as a parallax. So we can use this phenomena to extract the geometrical information of any object. So once you are having the geometrical information, that we will call it as a interspace of the components. How components are spaced, what is the interspace between the different components. This interspace is also known as the distance or depth of the image, and these images are known as the stereo images. So now once you are having the interspace, uh, based on the interspace, you can create the image. That is the basic fundamental principle lying in the depth map. So now coming to the reconstruction process, how we can create the reconstruction in the depth map is, first you have to have the calibration cameras. Once your cameras are calibrated, you can acquire the depth map. As already I told you, it is nothing but a distance of the pixel, every pixel. Once you are having the depth map, you can create the 3D model. So this is the way how we are going to create the depth map. These are the basic steps we have to follow. Now coming to the mathematical modeling. So this is your, these are the two cameras, O and O dash are the two cameras. As already I mentioned you need the two cameras. So this is, we will call it as a baseline. Two cameras are separated by a distance B. We will call it as a baseline. These are the two planes where you are capturing the image. And this is the point which you are generating. This is a, capital X is a real world 3D point. That 3D point you are creating from the 2D planes. This is the one plane, this is the another plane. These are the two cameras. Now you use the triangular, similar triangular principle. Let us consider O dash X and X dash X as the another. From that you can create the depth. Here depth is nothing but the Z. So X dash is said to be the disparity. So this disparity can be computed by using the formula. B is the baseline, F is the focal length of the camera, Z is the distance. Once Z is known, you can easily compute the depth map, M by disparity. So this is the way, this is the earlier mathematical modeling. If you see the real-time scenario, this is your two planes and this is your world coordinate or world point. World point is a three-dimensional. This is a two-dimensional planes. So here you are projecting the point and you want to create the same real world coordinate of these same point. This is your baseline. So here you are interested with the construction of the Y, which is a depth map. So this is the way how you can measure the disparity. This is the two real-time images. So two views of two left image as well as the right image. This is the disparity. Once you know the disparity, you can compute the depth map. Now this is the, as already I told you, you can use the UNet or multiple CNNs to reconstruct the 3D Euclidean data. So here we are using the UNet or autoencoder, you can say, encoder decoder combination to reconstruct the image. First give the image and you can process through the UNet and then you are able to get the depth map of the image. This is the way how we are going to create the depth map. And here the process is the same as you learned in the day one. What are the basic fundamental 5 steps are there? Same 5 steps we are using here. First you have to specify the problem. After that you have to build the network, train the network, fit the network and predict. Same 5 steps we will follow here also. So this is the way how we are going to generate the depth map. So these are the results we applied on a data set of the 10 classes. We got various we are able, I will make a pause. So we are able to create the depth maps of various scenes as well as the objects. So this is the second work which we carried out in the reconstruction of the 3D models. Even for any image, by using these 5 statements, you can create the depth map. Simply you read the images. These are the 3 libraries you need. You already you studied the NumPy, import NumPy and Vision, CV2 import and matplotlib. It is required for graphical representation or visualization. First read the 2 views of the image. Now create the function, stereo function. By using, I request all the participants, please mute yourself. All the participants, please mute yourself.
ଗୋଟେ ଦିଟା ବେଳକୁ ଆସିବୁ ଲ୍ୟାବ୍ ୱାନ୍ଟା ଖାଲି ଝାଡୁ କରିଦେବୁ ଖାଲି ତୁ ତମର ସାର୍ କହିବୁ ଏଇ ଲ୍ୟାବ୍ ୱାନ୍ରେ କାମ ଚାଲିଛି କଣ କହିଲୁ ପାର୍ଟିସନ୍।
So you can create the depth map simply by using these 5 statements. This is a very easy process. Anyway, we are going to share the PPT. You can try on your own also. Now you got the experience how to handle the things. So this is the way how you can create the depth map of any image. But same for the same image, you need two views to create the depth map, as in case of your stereo vision. Only thing is, this we cannot say as a perfect 3D. This we will generally call it as a 2.5D. So as already I told you, using the same DenseNet, you can create the depth map. Here we are comparing with the earlier results. Now coming to the advantages and disadvantages of the depth map is representation. Here also you are following the dense representation, and even here we are not using any gray level functions. We are using the distance functions. So when there is a occlusions or any there is a distortions also, you can reconstruct, which is a problem with the stereo vision that can be encountered here. And here you are following the depth function or distance function. Images depth is discontinuous. You can even go for the edges, or when there are the discontinuous also, you can handle these things. But coming to the disadvantages, here totally from reference point is camera. All the time you need the camera, and here you are not at all considering the physical geometry. Only your interest is the distance function, that sometimes you may not replicate the proper geometry. That may be the problem. And here totally depending upon how you are viewing the pixel. So it is a viewpoint dependent. That's the reason you can't blend also. You can't blend in, blending is not possible. So these are the certain disadvantages with the depth maps. Now we will see the, so far we have seen how to reconstruct structured data. Now we will take up how we can reconstruct the non-structured data. As you know that non-structured data doesn't have the representation in a single coordinate system. You can't represent them as a vectors. That is the problem. You can represent them as a graph, or you can represent them as in some other pattern we required. So now we will see how to reconstruct the non-structured data. So this is the method I told you. This is the generalized method in case of a structured data. You can take the multi-views. Each view can process through a single CNN, and you can pool the views and you can reconstruct the output. This is the generalized view which we can use for the structured data or rendered images. Now the problem with the non-rendered or with the unstructured data. So this is the general problem with the general view with the structured data. In case of structured data, there is one more technique. Whatever image you are having, you can make it as the voxels. From the voxels also, you can directly reconstruct the image. This is there with the in case of the three-dimensional structured cases. Now we will go to the, this is the network you can use for the, when you are using directly voxels, you can use the three-dimensional CNN. With 4 kernels, you can process the data. This already we learned with the J. Ravikumar sir classes, how to choose the kernel, how to, based on the input image sizes. Same process we are following here. Now we will take up with the non-structured data. Now coming to the non-structured data, instead of representing the entire image as a single one, we are going to represent the image as a point clouds. So point clouds is nothing but a different data points represented as a set of data points. Point cloud is nothing but a set of data points. It is nothing but a unordered set, mathematical set, unordered set of any object. Any object can be represented as a set of points. That unordered set is said to be the point cloud. So object as a bunch of isolated points in space, but point cloud is a 3D. That is the advantage. As already I told you in the earlier, this is the one way. You take all the two-dimensional directly, you create the 3D, and you can reconstruct. But here the problem is, When you are doing this process, lot of computation is required. And one more disadvantage is when you are combining all these pixels as a voxel, lot of geometrical representational problems also we are coming across. We need lot of computational power. Those are the problems. That is the reason now we are thinking of how to handle the directly 3D data. Is it possible? That is the point where we are right now. For that, we are thinking of the point cloud. Directly take the 3D view. Now represent the object, 3D object as a point cloud. That is nothing but a set of points. That set is said to be the point cloud. Set of points is said to be the point cloud. Now coming to the tasks, what kind of tasks your point cloud can perform? Your point cloud can able to perform two things. It can do the classification as well as the segmentation. Now you see here, this is the object which is represented as a 3D cloud. You see this is the stool. Here this is the point cloud of the stool. This is the sofa. So all the objects, how they are represented as a point cloud. Now coming to the point cloud, these point sets, here you are representing each image in terms of the points. So let us say if you are having the image means when you are making the image or 3D image into n points means those n points are all individual. You can represent as n permutations, n unique representation, n factorial views are there to represent those points. So while taking these permutations, your object shouldn't be disturbed. So it should satisfy few properties. One thing must be, it should be a permutation invariance. When you are representing your object by using n three-dimensional points, there are n factorial ways to represent that object. While representing that object in n factorial numbers, it shouldn't change its order. That means though you are representing permutations, it shouldn't be invariant. So invariant to the permutations, and the same way you are representing as individual points. If some points may be merged with the other, and your object shape variance may come. So it shouldn't be. It should be the transformation invariance, and how interaction should be performed between the various points. These 3 points must be we must look into. One should be the permutation invariance, transformation invariance, what kind of interactions existing between the points we must take. That means when you are considering the object and you are performing the segmentation means the interaction between the points within that object must be closely packed. In the same way, interspatial variations also we have to take into account. This is what I mentioned. By using your point net, you can perform the segmentation as well as the classification. Again, within the segmentation, you can do the part segmentation or semantic segmentation. Yesterday, you have seen semantic segmentation is represented with the entire scene. So you can go with the semantic segmentation, or even the parts can be segmented by using your point nets. So this is the workflow we will follow for the classification of objects by using the point nets. You have to acquire the 3D data sets. LiDAR is useful for directly collecting the 3D data, or there are certain scanners. By using the scanners also you can get the 3D data set. Once you are having the 3D data set, you have to prepare the you have to perform certain operations. All are points. When you are dealing with the points, there are certain parameters are required. First, you have to prepare the data to the required level. After that, you have to create the point net and you have to train the model. Later on, you have to test, and any predictions are required, you have to perform. This is the workflow we will follow in case of point net also. This is the point net architecture, whichever we are seeing here. This is the point net architecture. As already you have seen 3 points. One is the permutation invariance, transformation invariance, and as well as the interactions. Now, if you observe the point net architecture, let us say you are inputting n points, n by 3 in the sense every point we are considering a 3-dimensional, so n by 3. Total number of points are n input points. Each point is a 3-dimensional. First, we will perform some transformation. Here we will use the T-net as well as all the points we have to pack up. T-net will be useful, which is a transformation variances to look after. We will get the T-net. After that, we will go through this as the multi-layer perceptron. Multi-layer perceptron is a feed-forward neural network you have studied in the first class. Since all are individual points, instead of CNN, you can go through the multi-layer perceptron. Once after learning through the perceptron, you can extract the features by using the feature transformation. And now you can see all the 124 points. You are stretching the points. So 124 points, that is fully connected layer. You are coming to the fully connected layer. Now you see the global interaction between the points. As already I told you, interaction invariance you have to see, global interactions you have to see, and for each, suppose you are performing the classification, means you have to assign the output scores for each point of your point net. Finally, you can classify. If it is a segmentation task, means instead of global, you have to see the local variations also within the points. Then you can perform the for output scores, you have to assign for all the features. Then you have to perform the segmentation. So up to the preparation level, it is common. Then if you are performing the classification, means you can assign the global label. If it is a segmentation, means you have to perform global as well as the local interactions. So this is what I am explaining the same, how to input whatever I mentioned in the image. First you have to take the features and pooling operation and K classes. You have to assign the scores at the output level. And if it is a segmentation, you have to see both local as well as the global. And in between, you have to go through the multi-layer perceptron. At the end, fully connected, you have to apply the ReLU with the softmax to do the same. And here lot of points are there. You can have the fixing, you can have the problem of fitting problem. You can use some dropout layers also to come out of that problem. So this is the data set we applied on this data set. ModelNet 10 data set we considered. 10 in the sense it is having 10 output classes. Totally it is having around 5,000 images. Out of 5,000, 4,000 images, 80% we considered as a training data, 10% around 900 images we considered as a test data set. And we trained the network with these classes. These are the objects of the classes. After that, so first representation is this much. First your whatever the object you are giving, that will be represented as a mesh or net. Then you are coming to the point cloud. You are representing as a point cloud. After that, that point cloud is not able to detect the shape. That is the reason you have to go with the sampling. That means using random noise, you have to add additional noise so that you can get the shape. Once you are ready with the point net data, now you build the model, point net model you can build. Once you build the model, you can fit and train as well as the test. So this is the model. After that, train the net. Now you evaluate the net. So once evaluated, you can assess the accuracy. For assessing the accuracy, here we are using this object is a categorical object. That's why we are using the categorical accuracy. Here if you observed, we got the 78. For 15 epochs, you got the 78% as the categorical accuracy. If you increase the number of epochs, your accuracy also increases. And at all the levels, training, testing level, we will see the accuracy. Finally, you can predict various classes. This is an output we got after the prediction with the point net. Same thing we are represented in the visualization formats. These are the accuracy graphs we are able to draw here. Now this is the graph, TensorFlow graph. We after creation of the network, this is the graph we obtained from the net. Further accuracy can be improved point net plus plus. This is the next level network. After comparing same data set we applied, same methodology we followed, and if we compare both the networks, this is your ground truth in a room. What are the objects? Semantic segmentation, semantic reconstruction we are thinking of. These are the different objects. This is your ground truth. This is the point net outcome. This is the point net plus plus outcome. You see, this is able to reconstruct more objects compared to the point net. And compared to the points, if you are varying the number of points, your representation is going to be increased in case of the point net. That is the message you can observe from this image. So now I would like to thank all my student team which are participated in the reconstruction of this process. I would like to thank Pavan Kumar, Lok Sandeep, Ramana, Satya, Tulasi, as well as Pavan Arvind, who were involved in this work and who are able to materialize all these things. Thank you one and all. So thank you so much. If you are having any doubts, you can represent. Otherwise, we will show you the Google Colab, how this training can be happen. 15 minutes more, 15 minutes are there. We will show you how you can handle these things.
Good morning, ma'am. Ma'am, can you suggest some of the point cloud data set and website, ma'am, net?
Model 10 network is there, na? Model net 40 is there, model net 10 is there. Kitty.
Ma'am, I'm asking about the data set repository for point cloud.
Kitty, all these whatever I am mentioning is the point nets only.
Okay, ma'am.
Kitty, one more data set is available for us. I am sharing, madam. In this already I represented. You please go through that. Even if you are having LiDAR, you can collect, madam. If you are having LiDAR, you can collect.
Okay, okay.
Madam, this is the Colab. You see, same process. This is the mesh network. For one class, I am showing you. This is one class. So as already you are seeing, this is after applying the random noise. This is a model creating the net and training the net. So these are the summary of network which we are created, and we run for the 20 epochs. We will show you one more examples with YOLOnet in case of object detection, which is more useful for 3D data as well as the 2D data, even for images as well as the videos. Now, one of my student is going to explain you how to detect the drone with some animations, which is more interesting for you.
Good morning, and first of all, I'd like to thank our Dr. Anusharani ma'am and all the coordinators and who are all attending this meeting for presenting me with this opportunity. In this session, we'll see about object detection model. We chose YOLO V3. YOLO stands for You Only Look Once. First, let me give you a brief introduction about our work and how YOLO actually works. So this is our objective. We are going to perform custom object detection, that is drone in our case. So what is object detection? Object detection is a task of identifying an object and locating it in a specific image. How it is different from classification in the sense, in classification, we just classify an image without localization. Means we can identify what is present in the image, but where it is present we cannot specify exactly. So using another localization step, we can detect that object as well as specify its location, like in terms of coordinates in that image. So these are different things we have in recognition. First, just now I said what classification does, and if we add localization to it, we'll call it object detection. And another thing, segmentation. In object segmentation, we'll highlight each and every pixel of that object, so it can be separated from its background, and that's how we can visualize object. There are like three major types in object detection. First one is RCNN model family. This is a two-step detection, and YOLO model family is a one-step detection, which we are going to discuss further. And heat map based object detection is still under process, and there's so much research and improvements going on. So these are the three major families. And coming to our model, that is YOLO V3, it was developed by Joseph Redmond, and we chose version 3 for our detection task. There are version 4 and 5 also available, but some controversies are going on that there was not much improvement in the latest versions, and they are pretty much same. So we are chosen version 3. It can detect using images, live feeds, and videos also. So it will be more helpful for real-time object detection. Since YOLO can detect in a single step, it can perform faster than RCNN and fast RCNN. And it has, if we talk about version 3, it incorporates skip connections, residual blocks, and upsampling, which were not present in version 2 and version 1. So darknet is the underlying architecture for our YOLO. These names may sound informal. YOLO stands for you only look once, and this darknet is a network. They named it that way, and it is written in C and CUDA language, and it supports GPU computations. Since it is written in C, it is very faster when compared to other networks. Darknet, if we talk about Darknet 53, it is a 53-layer network. It is pre-trained using the ImageNet dataset that consists of 1,000 classes, and this will be our backbone of YOLO architecture. When we are talking about YOLO V3, it is a 106-layer fully connected convolution model. Apart from the 53 layers that were previously present in Darknet, we'll stack 53 more layers for the detection task. So coming to the dataset preparation, we in this experimentation, we chose two classes. Those are drones and birds. If we take pre-trained weights and use them for detection, we could identify basic classes that belong to COCO dataset. It consists of 80 classes, and we can identify them with the inbuilt model using those predefined weights. But we are going to modify it further so that it can detect our custom data classes. Those are birds and drones in our case. So for collecting the data set, we can use this open image dataset, Google Open Image dataset. There are over 600 classes of images and the dataset present in that website. But we couldn't get the drone dataset from that website, so we chose Kaggle Kaggle to get the drone dataset, and for the bird images, we chose Google Open Image dataset. So in the drone dataset, we found around 1700 images. So to balance this model and classes, we chose the bird dataset to contain the same number of images. And coming to implementation part, the basic working of YOLO is it does segmentation of the image into smaller grids, and using these small grids, it processes the CNN architecture to look and identify each object by looking at the features and shape and sizes of the objects. Here, as I have already discussed, the backbone is pre-trained on a ImageNet data set that consists of 1000 classes. And for our model, the training time, it took around 8 to 10 hours when we used Google Colab, and we ran it on a GPU. So this is the architecture of YOLO v3. We can see there are concatenation and addition block present, and it performs detection at 3 scales. Here at the 80 layer number 82, the stride value will be 32. So when we provide input image of 416 into 416 image, if we apply striding of 32, our image will be downsized to 13 cross 13. So here we'll be able to detect larger objects. And coming to the layer 94, here we'll be able to detect medium scale objects. Here the striding value is 16. So our feature map will be of size 26 cross 26. When we take an input image of 416 cross 416 and stride it with 6. Use a filter of and stride it with 16, and we'll get this 26 cross 26 feature map. And similarly, at the final 106 layer, we'll keep the stride value as 8, and the feature map will be of size 52 cross 52. Here we'll detect much smaller images. So these are results. Implementation part again we'll see using our Colab notebook. These are the images we collected from just Google Images, and we performed the detection. These are results on videos. These videos are we taken using our own camera at our college. You can see with around 90% confidence it can detect these drones. Even in night time without proper lighting conditions, it is able to detect. So we did like further experimentation by changing the learning rate. Initially it was set to 0.001, and we wanted to see what will happen if we change it into 0.005 and 0.01. So final loss remained pretty much same, but we can see that here our loss curve, it converges faster when we chose the learning rate to be higher. And when the learning rate is low, it takes more iterations, or it takes more time to converge. And that's how we conclude our YOLO v3 detection. And this point is the same as I have discussed earlier, that learning rate will affect how quickly our model can converge to local minima. But the final average loss has remained more or less the same. In our case, it was 0.42. Now we'll see the implementation part in Google Colab. I can share this Colab link if Later, I will share this link. For now, we'll see its implementation. First, we have to enable the GPU. I have already kept the hardware accelerator as GPU, so here it is. And first, we'll clone the GitHub repository of Darknet using this link, and we'll set up and build all the required environment for this Darknet using these commands. Also, this make command to build our model. Then we'll get the pre-trained weights. As I said, it is previously trained on COCO dataset with 1,000 classes. So these weights are for identifying those classes which are present in COCO dataset. And these are some helper functions for plotting and showing our image results. And this will be the command for detection. All these commands are like command line arguments. We will not write in any procedural codes here. First, we'll specify the darknet location, that is path, and we'll give this command detect. And then these are configuration files and YOLO v3 weight files. And we have given the image here, person.jpg to detect. Those are some predefined classes present in COCO dataset, and this is how the detection is done. These are the image results, and these images are present when we clone this GitHub repository itself. Will be present. There will some images present, and these are those images. This is horse. This is another image where dog and truck is detected. So these are all the predefined classes. Here a bird is detected. This is similar one with a giraffe image. And coming to our custom detection, we'll first mount our Google Drive with our Colab notebook, and we'll upload all the custom images. And here is another detection made on aeroplane. Okay, coming to our custom detection, we'll need all these. First, we'll need a label custom dataset. As I mentioned in the presentation part, we got our dataset from Google Open Image Datasets, and for drone dataset, we collected from Kaggle website. And we need a custom CFG file. We have to make a few modifications in this CFG file, and object.data, object.names, and this we'll see further what are the modifications required. We'll convert the folder that consists this dataset into a zip file, and we'll upload it to our drive. And here we are copying it to Cloud Virtual Machine. This virtual machine, it will, once we disconnect our drive or terminate our Colab or terminate our session, that will be gone, what are present in this virtual machine. So we have zipped all our images and uploaded to Google Drive and copied it to this virtual machine. And this is how we'll modify our configuration file. We'll be changing classes and batch size or subdivisions accordingly. These are the width and height of our image, 416 cross 416 pixels. After modifying that CFG file, we'll rename it as YOLO v3 underscore custom, and we'll again copy it to our Cloud Virtual Machine. So this is, as I said earlier, object.names. It is a text file. We can simply edit it using Notepad. We have defined the labels as drone and bird here, and the same thing applies for object.data file. We are defining the number of classes and the location of trained dataset and validation dataset. Validation is optional here, and the names of the files, that is of the images. And in this backup folder, we'll store our weights of the model. So after editing all these object.data and object.names, we'll copy it again to our virtual machine, this updated files, and then we'll run this generate Python generate train.python file. It will, what it does is it will list out all the names of our images so that it will be easier to access those files. Again, we are copying it to our virtual machine. And these are the weights for our Darknet 53 model. These are also pre-trained on ImageNet dataset with 1000 classes. These are required for our, these are means not required or mandatory, but it is said that it will fasten our training process. This is the training command. We'll use Darknet detector train. As previously, while detecting, we used just detect command, and here we are using detector space train. And this is the, we are specifying object.data .cfg file, and this is Darknet file which is loaded with these pre-trained weights. And don't show is for stopping the loss curve to pop every time for every iteration. We'll use this don't show flag. After training, this step will take around 8 to 10 hours for training our model, and after completion of training, if we plot our loss curve, it will be somewhat like this. This is for around 1000 iterations. We have stopped our training process at 1000 iterations. Likewise, we can extend it accordingly. And if in some case our Colab gets disconnected or our runtime gets disconnected, we can use the previously trained weights. They will be stored in this backup folder, and from those particular iterations, we'll train it. We'll continue the training process. Now we are setting this detect CFG file to test mode using these commands, and after training with our custom dataset, these are the results. This we have shown it in the PPT also. These are the test results using our after training with custom dataset. This is the drone and bird. There will be some mismatches too. Here the confidence is 0.61. That depends on the size of the image also, and it will better distinguish when the background is blue or white. Here there are few errors. Here our model is not able to detect a few birds because there is overlapping, I guess, and here also the confidence decreases depending on the size, background, and many other feature aspects. And this command is for detecting using video. All previous ones we have performed the detection on images. If we want to detect using video, we have to use this detector demo command. And similarly, as we have specified above, we need an object.data file, custom.cfg file, and weights of our YOLO v3. And here we are giving the video location of our video, and we'll specify the output file name, and threshold is for the confidence threshold we are giving. It should detect if the confidence is minimum of 70%. For each frame we are getting the outputs here. Let me see if it detected any object. Here it detected a drone with 70 to 70% confidence. Video we have stored, we can download to our drive. It's present in our it will be present in our drive. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Now the session is open for the, if anybody have any queries, please raise your queries.
It was a very good session.
Hello. Hello.
Please,
Please,
please.
madam.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, I am new to Google Colab. So I
Okay.
am just curious that if, like you have said that the networks are trained for 5, 10, 8 to 10 hours. So if I am disconnected in between, so do we need to do the backup ourselves, or it is already backed up and we can start again from where we left?
The darknet model is it is designed in such a way that it will create a backup of the weights after every 100 iterations. We can modify it accordingly, like after 1,000 iterations or after each iteration we want to update in our backup folder. So that's how it is.
Okay, and if some other model is being trained, like if I'm using my own data set, I am training my own model, then
Yeah, we can get the data set from Google Images, and if in that Google Open data set, if our images, the required images are not present, we can download it manually from Google, and we can use a tool called Label IMG that is used for annotation of that, like creating the bounding boxes for each image. We have to do that manually, so it will be a time-taking process for our custom.
and about the backup, then I have to create backup on my own.
Yeah, here I'll show my drive folder. Yeah, it will be present after, generally it is defined in such a way that after every 100 iterations, a weights folder will be stored in that back. Updated here, this backup folder and this weights file will be updated after every 100 iterations. Whenever it disconnects, we can continue with those weights.
At the time of running, whatever stored in the previous 100th, that will be, we can go with that, man.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Still, if anybody have any queries, madam or sir?
Hello.
Madam, please.
Sir, I have a query. I have built my own model. I am training it. If it is taking more than 8 hours for training, then what to do? I am using Google Colab, and in Google Colab, after 8 hours, it will disconnect.
In your drive.
Yeah, yes, in our case also it is disconnected like after 2000 iterations. That is around after 3 to 4 hours it got disconnected. Those weights, like previous weights, we are using to continue the training process. So that won't be a problem. If we increase the classes or iterations also, after disconnection, we have to continue with, we can continue with those previous weights. Those are saved in our backup folder. That's how
Okay, well, first we need to take the backup, and if it is disconnected, then we can start from that point.
from at that particular iteration, we can continue using those backup weights.
Okay.
Madam, when you are running the code, backup will be stored automatically in your Google Drive. So let us say 2000 iterations you are planned. 300 iterations, your weights are updated. Let us say you are at 1500. Between 1500, by the time power was gone or some interruption came, then whatever is there at 1400 iteration, that whatever weights updation is there, that is available with your Google Drive.
Okay.
You can run with that. Further, you can go with that weights.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. Object detection you have performed using YOLOnet. So same thing can be performed using single shot detector and fast RCNN also, sir.
Yes, sir. Those are different families. Single shot detection is also similar to YOLO, that is faster, and it does the detection and localization and detection part in a single process. And RCNN, as I mentioned, it is a two-step process. So accuracy will be more and detection time will be less, we can say.
Okay.
That's the
Bounding
difference.
box prediction and all will be the same in the
Yes,
case of YOLOnet as well as SSD.
Yes, and for real-time detection, we can consider YOLO as it is faster. And for other applications, if we need more accuracy, we can go for fast RCNN. That's how it is.
Okay.
For
Okay, thank you, sir.
natural images, YOLO is best, sir. Already it was trained on many objects
Okay.
on real-time data. If custom
Okay.
data set, if you want, you can go with fast RNN.
For a data set, we can go for RCNN. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So, no, thank you all. Thank you, madam, for giving this wonderful session on behalf of Vignan University. So we are giving a small digital award to you. Please accept, madam.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, madam. So, thank you all. The next session, this is for this first session for this day, and next session is going to be started at 12 p.m. by Dr. Sendil Kumar, Associate Professor from Amrita University, Coimbatore, and he is going to give the talk on hands-on object detection and tracking optical flow algorithms. So we are going to be, please all of you join at 12 o'clock. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.